So in this segment, we're going to be talking about leave voting British fishermen speaking of Brexit regrets to Danish TV, and it's interesting that it's a lot of foreign media. So CNN have done great work here, and other kind of apart from the Byline Times, other kind of foreign outlets have done great work when it comes to talking to fishermen about what their situation is like, and it's interesting that national kind of news outlets in the UK haven't done that great a job of doing it. And so most likely here you have Danish reporters coming to the UK in order to ask the fishermen questions, and I'm not berating them for that. I think this is great. I think it's good news. At least the news is getting out there. But yeah, it's very strange that it's mainly foreign media that are covering this. But yeah, let's go into the article. So, a Leave voting fisherman has spoken out about his regret after voting for Brexit and said life has become very difficult since leaving the UK. So, no sunlit uplands. Since the UK had left the EU. My bad. Ian Perks, a fish exporter from Brixham in Devon, told Danish broadcaster DR that he was lied to about the implications of leaving the EU and it had increased costs for his business. He says, we'll watch it in the video as well because you can see the pain in the man's face. He said that, do you think I would have voted to leave if I'd known it was going to cost me another £80,000 a year? Of course not. Only a fool would have voted to go out, wouldn't he, knowing that? So, we'll go on to this. And obviously, these people weren't warned about the exact cost, but they were warned that if the UK does become a third country, these would be the costs. You cannot do trade deals with other countries and be a part of the single market. It doesn't work. It doesn't fundamentally make sense. So we'll watch the video.
Do you think I'd have voted to leave if I'd known it was going to cost me another £80,000 a year? Well, of course not. Only a fool would have voted to go out, wouldn't he? Knowing that.
Do you feel like you were lied to?
Well, we were lied to. We were told that we were going to have free trade. We were not guaranteed we were going to get a 12-mile limit back, but we assumed with we were reading and what we were being told that would be a case.
If you could go back to yourself in 2016 in June, when you're in that ballot box, you're about to vote leave and say something to yourself.
If I could go back?
Yeah, if you could go back and say something to yourself then, what would you say?
Don't be a fool. Stay in Europe. Why would you want to leave? Life has become, very difficult since we've left. And I don't see no happy ending at present. So yeah, I did get it wrong. And hands up. I admitted that I was wrong, but I'm not an isolated case.
I'm not going to dunk on this guy because he was very much lied to. I mean, some of these fishermen, did get greedy where they thought they would get access to, like he said, most of the 12-mile limit around British waters and still have access to, free access to EU markets. No checks or anything like that, vet checks, and so. They got greedy, I would argue, but I'm not going to dunk on this guy because I don't think it's fair because he was lied to. And, fishing isn't the most lucrative industry. You're not going to make millions of millions unless you have massive fishing fleets or you just sell off quotas and you make money from doing that. But, I do feel bad for the guy. I know there'll be people in the comments saying, he deserved it because he voted leave. It's tough, innit? It's tough to feel a lot of sympathy, but 80 grand a year extra in costs, and not to mention the fact that he's an exporter, so that he would be buying the fish from fishermen and then exporting it out en masse. Some fishermen are going directly to EU countries in order to sell their fish, which means that they've just cut him out. Some of these fishermen will just cut him out completely. So asked by the presenter what Mr. Parks would say to himself, he said, "Don't be a fool, stay in Europe, why would you want to leave? Life has become so difficult." And he says he wasn't an isolated case, so I would be interested to see a poll of fishermen who voted for Brexit and to see if they still stand by their decision. I think that'd be quite interesting. I know some of them say that, this is the new reality now, we have to get on with things, but unless you hold liars accountable, it doesn't achieve much. Mr. Perks told the Daily Express previously that his sales had declined from £375,000 in January 2020 to £74,000 this year. So that number is going to tick back up a bit, 74 grand, as he gets better at doing things like customs checks and vet checks, etc. But his business has taken a massive hit. And, people argue, what about COVID? COVID was there for most of January 2020, pretty much from March onwards. So making that argument is just a stupid argument. Fish contributes less to 1% of GDP, but the thing that people forget is they're massive. Fishing industry is massive for certain communities, small villages and towns that rely heavily on the fishing industry, because it's not just the fish that they catch, but it's the processing as well. It goes from fishermen to processes, potentially to fish processing places where some of that stuff will get sold on in fish markets, so there's jobs there, or it would go on to exporters who then paid lorry drivers to export that fish into the EU. So that it might not be worth that much as a percent of GDP, but villages and towns are reliant on it. When manufacturing died in this country, towns and cities in the north were ruined because they were manufacturing centric. So I don't like the fact that people try and say, oh, it's only worth 1% of GDP. Like, it's worth a lot more than that in some ways. Brexit, fish became symbolic for Brexiteers who wanted to regain control of fishing waters and still have not achieved that. But since leaving the trading bloc, fishermen have complained about additional red tape when exporting to the EU, causing significant delays. I do wonder, if we did get some sort of SPS agreement, how much of those kind of checks would be gone. I'm sure someone in the comments could tell me about that. But this is just insanity. On the 18th of January, fishing industry workers descended on Whitehall to protest Boris Johnson's Brexit deal and drove lorries around Whitehall, emblazoned with Brexit carnage, incompetent government destroying the shellfishing industry. And yeah, they did, to be fair. Since then, Environment Secretary George Useless has admitted that the deal the government signed had he admitted that the deal the government signed with the EU on fish fell short of expectations by the industry, because you hyped up expectations. You were like, oh, we hold all the cards. Well, not Useless specifically, but it was Michael Gove. We hold all the cards. The EU are going to want to continue doing business with us. It's not in their interest to go do otherwise. And then you realise that the EU is not just a business orientated institution. It's a project. It's a belief in the way things can be run differently in Europe. The idea of free trade, of countries having high standards so that you don't need to have checks because you trust each other. But we in Britain didn't understand that. We just didn't get it, and we voted leave, and it's going to impact. It's had massive negative impacts already. And I do feel bad for the geezer, I do, because he was lied to. And at some point we have to, it's difficult, because I do it as well. We have to stop, dunking on these people saying, you're stupid for doing this. And, try and figure out a way to kind of resolve some of the issues that these industries are having. And maybe that is through equivalency with the EU. Maybe that's one way of helping them. It's not going to be the end all and be all. You're still going to have things like customs and vet checks, but they won't be checking 30% of consignments. That might be lowered to say 10%, which will help them. It will lessen delays within in transit between the UK and the EU. So I don't know, man. I don't have a lot of answers, but something has to be done to help these people, because we can make the arguments that, well, it's his fault, he voted for this, but at the end of the day, people were saying, I think it's Owen Patterson or whatever his name is, was saying that only a madman would leave the single market. I guess we must be a bunch of lunatics then in this country, because we did it. It's tough to really figure out a solution for these people, but I would say to them is start lobbying the government, start lobbying the opposition parties, and maybe you can convince Keir Starmer to put in the manifesto for the next election that the UK will look for equivalency where possible with the EU, so that it will lower the burden slightly on things like meat processing, the agri-foods, and the fishing industry. Hopefully will be a benefit of any kind of SPS agreements that we can make with the EU. But until then, I don't know. A lot of these fishing industries will go under. More people start selling their quotas to EU fishermen because it's not viable for them. We're not a massive fish eating country compared to how much poultry and beef and lamb that we eat. We're just not. The domestic market isn't there, and you can try to push for marketing campaigns, etc., but buying fresh fish is quite expensive in this country, and in order to freeze it, it will last longer, but it's going to lower in value massively. So in a lot of ways, it's not worth it. That's why a lot of these fishermen sold their stock to the EU, because fresh fish is worth a premium. It's always at a premium. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.